But I want to get into something so important. I had this really interesting experience where I met this guy and he says to me, I heard you got a podcast going. And I said, yeah. He said, well, what's it about? And I'm like, it's about all the areas that hold us back from being able to succeed in business, like all the emotional pieces. He's like, I don't get it. I'm like, why not? He says, it's not about an emotional piece. It's about that I don't know what to do. And I'm sure so many of you guys feel the same way. Like I started a whole podcast busy talking about like the emotional piece of execution. And you're like, execution? What are you talking about? I just don't know what to do. And that's why I'm not doing it. And I want to give you a technique here that will change all that, because I want to give you a technique that will help you understand and will get to the core of what exactly is holding you back from being successful. What is that piece? Where is it? What's it coming from? What is it? How do I figure out what to do about it? So that when you have this piece clear, you now have marching orders. You know exactly what is the piece that I can now do that will lead me to be more successful. Not just even in my business, in my personal life, in any endeavor that I have. And it's going to sound so simple. But here's the thing about simple things. The best things in life are simple. If we make things complicated, that's the easy way. The point is that your entire life you've been struggling, or for a long time you've been struggling, and here there's something that's so simple. The reason why it's simple is because there's so much behind it. There's so much at the core of what's going on. So I'm going to explain this to you, and I'm going to explain this to you through this story, change some details to make sure we keep this guy's information confidential, like we always do with all information, all stories that we ever say on this podcast. I say to the guy, I say, let me give you an example. What do you do for a living? What do you do? And he says, let's say, we'll just make up a story here. He says that he works in finance, and he runs a lot of departments in the finance world, and he's looking to move into taking on clients as a CFO that's off location. So basically, again, we just made up this story just to bring out the point. Basically, has a lot of experience in the finance world, and there are a lot of companies that are growing. They don't want to put a CFO on their payroll at this point in time and pay the full amount. They don't need that kind of level of service, but they do need a CFO. Since he has experience in finance, especially because he's not working on location, he'll take these clients on, and he'll be able to have multiple people who will hire him. And there's a ton of upside there. There's a ton of upside because you can charge significantly less than having an on location CFO, but you could take on a bunch of people, and this is his place. This is where he wants to go with his business. So I said, what do you do now? He starts explaining how he works in the finance world. I say, okay, so why don't you do this? Like, what's stopping you? He says, well, I don't know exactly how a CFO role works. Like, I know everything about finance, but when I work on another company, what's the first steps that I'm going to do? Am I going to, work through their books first? Am I going to meet with people? Like, I'm just not comfortable in that position. So I said, okay. And what do you need to do in order to get comfortable? He says, well, I would have to see different CFOs or find someone who's doing this kind of business and try to get on board and watch them doing it and watch the process. So I say, okay, that sounds amazing. Why don't you do that? He says, oh, because it's I don't know really how to do that, because if a guy has his own business as a CFO, then how do I come on board and start asking him if he wants to give me information? I said, okay. So what do you need to do to figure out what it is that you would need to do? In other words, is there someone who has done this kind of thing before, has moved into another business, that you can ask how you can get into those CFOs or those people who are doing CFO business on the side, because either one of them would give you more information. Do you know someone in a CFO role that you can sort of ask questions to and get more clarity? He says, well, it's really weird because like I'm coming to the CFO and being like, I want to be a CFO. And like, why would he answer me? And would he answer me? And I say, okay, I got that. That makes a lot of sense. It's really uncomfortable. So you're telling me the reason why you don't do it is because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable moving into going and speaking to these CFOs when you don't know them fully, when you don't have full clarity and all that. He says, well, I don't really know how to do it. I said, well, how to do it? I know we're making this long story over here, but how to do it, you just explained. You got to go to those CFOs, but you're telling me it's uncomfortable. He says, yeah, you're right. It's about, I'm just not comfortable doing it. I said, oh, really cool. So now we realize that the reason why we're not doing it is not so much because we don't have that information. It's because you're not comfortable taking that step of reaching out to those CFOs. Okay, let's break this down. What do you think about it makes you feel uncomfortable? He says, good question. I guess I feel stupid about reaching out to them. And I say, oh, you're telling me you just feel dumb. Like, so is that because you think he's going to think of you in a bad way? He says, well, it's just uncomfortable. I said, okay. And again, we're going to use another technique. We're going to get back into the details in a second. Okay. So you're saying you don't want to become a CFO because it's too uncomfortable to take that step. He says, no. I want to do it. It's just, I'm uncomfortable. Okay, cool. So you're saying you're uncomfortable, but you really want to do it anyway. So let's talk about what's making you uncomfortable. So as we start talking, he starts explaining and we start getting to the core, which is the core of what most people struggle with. And that is the fear of failure. That means that if I'm going to make myself vulnerable by opening up my mind, expanding the possibilities in my life, opening up my dreams, and that doesn't work out, then I'm going to feel like a failure. If that doesn't work out, I'm going to feel like I can't do this. If that doesn't work out, then I'm going to feel like all those dreams that I have, they're never coming out. And I'm such a loser because I'm stuck forever in this place that I'm in right now. And I'll never get out. And I said, cool. That's what we talk about in this podcast. Do you see that? The way that we figure out what's holding us back is to keep asking two questions. And those questions are, what about that bothers me? Right? As well as, what is the step, and this is more important, that I would need to take in order to get to the next step? Like, if I want to open this business, so what about that's holding me back? Well, I don't know X. Okay, how would you find out X? You would have to reach out to X person. But I don't know how to reach out to X person. Okay, so what's the step that you need to take in order that you should be able to reach out to X person? We're always going to ask that question until we get clarity on what that piece is. That would be our next step in the process. And as soon as we get that clarity on what that next step is, then we want to ask ourselves why. Why don't we do it? And it's always going to be about some discomfort that we have. And then we start asking ourselves, okay, what about that bothers me? And then the most common reason that you're going to find is going to be, it's going to be some sort of piece of failure. It's if I do that and it doesn't work, I'm going to feel dumb. If that guy looks at me bad, I'm going to feel dumb. I'm going to feel like a loser. I'm going to feel bad about myself. I'm going to feel stupid. And that's what holds us back. But here's the problem. The problem is that as long as that holds us back, we're going to stay in dream state and we're never going to get to where we want. This guy has not all, he needs to figure out a few more things, but he has in him the ability to become an off-location CFO. And if he takes on a few businesses, he could charge each of them 70, I don't know, I'm just making up a number. I have no idea what CFOs, things CFOs take, but he could charge, say, $75,000 or even more. Likely could charge much more, but let's say he could even charge only $75,000, but he can work with like 6 businesses. And that's $450,000. Again, I don't know the exact details of an off-location CFO, so I can't say exactly, but there's a lot of money to be made there. He has it in him. He has the ability. But he's missing some nuance. It's not nuance. He's missing some small details that he has to perfect in order to be able to do it. Cool. What's the piece that I need to do in order to get there? We run away from this and we start blaming it on knowledge, when really at its core, it's about some discomfort emotional. It's an emotional discomfort. That's what it is. It's not about a lack of knowledge, but we blame knowledge because it makes us feel better about ourselves, because then we don't feel like we're a failure because it's just because I don't know. And if I would know, then it would work. If I would know, then it would be okay. If I would know, no, it wouldn't, because it's not about knowledge. It's about execution. That's the secret. So what we're talking about here is a clear technique on what you can do in order to get yourself that clarity. Give yourself that clarity so that you now know what is it that's holding you back. And what you're going to find is that in the vast majority of cases, it's going to be about some level of feeling bad about yourself. And I want to jump on that very quickly here and just say that it's very important for us to realize that discomfort that we have about us feeling like a loser, feeling like a failure, feeling like all that kind of stuff, that's at the very core of our very existence. Every single one of us feel that way, because at its most integral, at its most base level, our need as humans is to feel that we matter. And when that comes up, when I don't feel like I matter, when something's going to bother me because it makes me feel like a loser, then I feel like I don't matter. And if I don't feel like I don't matter, that's an existential threat to our very existence. That's the very core of who we are. And because our body's job is to protect us, which is something we're going to get into because that's at the very core of how we get over it. But since our body's job is to protect us, so what happens is that it's going to send us very uncomfortable feelings so that we don't put ourselves at risk of having that existential threat to our very existence. And that's why we're going to get super uncomfortable. And that's why we're going to stay away from being able to succeed in all the areas that we could succeed in all those areas. And the tragic part of it is there never was a lack of knowledge. Sure, there were a couple things we had to figure out, but those are the easy things. We just had to do those steps. There was never a piece missing from us being able to be successful and much more successful financially and personally in every way. And yet we will remain our entire lives in the exact same place we're in right now. You will remain in the exact place you're in right now, and nothing will change until we're able to take the steps that get us there. We don't argue with this in any other way, right? If I had to go to the store and I didn't take the steps it takes to go to the store, I didn't get in my car, I didn't drive there, I didn't walk there, I'm not getting to the store. But when it comes to our dreams, we leave them as dreams. We don't take those steps because they make us uncomfortable. But we don't take those steps, and yet we still just wait for the day where everything's going to work out. You can be successful. You can do better than you ever imagined. But you need the help. You need the direction. You need the ability to deal with it. And it's not your fault, because every time you open that up, you get into that existential threat. You know, if I'm at a risk of dying, I'm not going to take that step. Well, if my very core feels at risk, I'm not going to take that step. And that's why I work with so many people, and that's where their entire lives change, because if we can get past this, if we don't feel that existential threat, if we're able to jump in and live ourselves, what are we then able to accomplish? What would be possible for yourself? What will you then be able to do? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Because you need to be able to get there, and you're not getting there now. And that's just tragic. Because the only piece that's holding you back is that discomfort. And if you could get over that, you would then take the next small step. And if you would take the next small step, everything starts opening for you. It's not even just in business, in your personal life. You know you're messing up with this, with your spouse, with your weight, with your exercise routine, all those things. Why aren't you taking that step? It's not lack of knowledge. Something about it bothers you. So this is the technique that we use. We ask ourselves, okay, how do I get to that next step? What's the next piece? And then after we ask you, you're asking yourself that question. Spend 2 minutes. Keep on asking it till you get to a point that you know you really could take on, that you know you really could do. Then ask yourself, what really is holding you back from doing it? Now, sometimes you'll say, oh no, nothing's holding me back. I just didn't know until now. And that may be true to some extent, but you'll see you'll still be held back again. You'll take that step maybe today, and then you're going to fall off again. And that's why you should get the help that you need, because it would change your entire life. Because it's not going to be just, oh yeah, cool, now I know. Oh, okay, now I'm just going to take that step. Yes, that clarity is very, very helpful. And now that you have that clarity, it may very well make a very big difference in your life. But you still have that difficulty, that struggle that comes up, that difficulty that you feel when you have to take that step. And we want to create a life where all those difficulties stop coming up. All those difficulties stop getting in the way. And that's what this podcast is about. So we're going to do it short today because Roni's not here, but I had to get in this point. And what we went through over here is so essential. Here's the technique that will help us understand what is the piece that we need. And here's the technique to recognize what about it's really bothering us. And that's where we need help. That's what this podcast is going to be about. For more personalized help to really get you where you want, it's not going to be a podcast to reach out directly and we'll set you up for success because you have it in you. You have it in you. I'm putting out this podcast because there's so much information that will change people's lives because there is a path forward. You have it in you. Something blocks you. Let's get you to a place where the things that create that existential threat, that make you uncomfortable, stop making you uncomfortable. Let's get to a point where your emotions stop holding you back and instead serve as signposts. They're just things that are there that don't throw you off, and you're able to take them at whim whenever you want. When you feel comfortable, you take them. When you don't, you don't. That's all. Because that will change your life. It will change your life because you are capable, because you do have it in you, because there's so much that you yourself know you can accomplish. So let's make it happen.